What up everyone, this is Jamie Selects, and in this video I'm going to show you how to build an automated DJ business finance tracker using a software called Airtable and also linked up with your Google Calendar. So in the first part of the video I'm going to show you what the final product looks like, so that way you can get an understanding of what you're actually building, and then after that I'm going to show you how to build it from scratch. So the tracker is going to allow you to track both your revenue and also your expenses. So you're going to be able to see individual expenses, you're going to be able to add categories, which will then automatically total everything for you, so that way you're not like manually calculating it, and it will give you a cool interface where you can check out the summary of your business, both the different types of revenue that you have and also the different types of expenses. Now the cool part about it is it's automated in the sense that it syncs up with your Google Calendar, so it knows which gigs you had, and then when your gig was yesterday, meaning like you finished it the next day, it's going to send you an email, looks something like this. It's going to remind you to track your expenses for that particular gig. So it's going to send you a form, also just link to the grid if you want, whatever. It's really customizable, but this is what the form looks like. So that way you can fill in the information for the expense, same with revenue. And then when you fill out this form, a new row is created in these tables, and then the calculations happen automatically for you. So that's the end product. Now stay tuned for a tutorial on how to build it from scratch for yourself. Alright, so in this part of the video, I'm going to show you how to set up the tracker for yourself all the way from scratch. So the first thing you're going to do, if you haven't done this already, is to create an Airtable account. I have a referral link in the description on the YouTube video here, so if you want to click on that, you can go ahead and use that to create an account. Once you start creating it, it's going to ask you a bunch of questions to try to get to know how you're going to use the product. You can just skip all of these, honestly, and just try to get to your Airtable home base, which looks something like this. Once you're here, you can go back to the video, click on the link for the actual template itself, and it's going to bring you to a page that looks like this. And then what you're going to do is hit copy base, and then we can go ahead and get started. So once you've copied it into your account, it's going to look something like this. Cool, now we're in. So the first thing that we're going to do is actually sync the calendar. So one thing I recommend doing is use a calendar specifically only for your DJ related stuff. So if you intermingle like your personal calendar and your DJ related calendar, I recommend stop doing that, especially if you're going into a new year, and transfer all of your DJ related stuff, whether it's events, gigs, photo shoots, if you're giving DJ lessons, whatever it is, only use one particular calendar within your account for all your DJ stuff. So if you see, I have here Jamie Selects Gigs. That's specifically what I'm using for all of my gigs. If you need to create a new calendar, you can just hit the plus button, hit create new calendar, name it, and then create calendar, and then you can use it there. So I already have it here, and so I'm just going to enter in a test gig for the sake of the demo. Test gig, make sure you change the actual calendar to the correct one, and then we're going to add a time. Let's say it was 10 p.m., 2 a.m., save. Cool. So back over into Airtable, and you'll notice on the calendar sync button, this is like basically ported over from the one that I had, but because it can't port my actual calendar sync, it's just kind of this like blank data. So we can actually go ahead and delete this, and then we're going to hit the plus button. We're going to sync data from Google Calendar. Now if you haven't linked your calendar, you're going to want to hit connect new Google Calendar account. You can also manage them. So if you want to rename them, I like call them specifically what they are, because if you just link it, it'll just say like Google Calendar, and I think it's more helpful to actually like name it. So once you do that, you're going to go ahead and select it, and then you're going to select the specific calendar. So again, I did JS Gigs, and then you're going to want to sync the entire year that we're going to do. So since I'm doing this for 2022, I can sync it like that and hit next. Now you can select the field that you want. For the sake of this, we can just sync them all. You don't actually use all the fields, but just for simplicity's sake. Cool. And then you'll see it has the name of the calendar, and you can either rename it if you want or just keep it like that, whatever is up to you. And then for all these fields that you don't need, if you want to hide fields in Airtable, you just go to this button called Hide Fields, and we can just hide all of these. You really don't need any of them, to be honest. Cool. So now your calendar is synced, and you can see I have this new gig that I just linked here. Now, whenever you add something else that's new to your calendar, in the free version of Airtable, which is what you're just going to have off the jump here, unless you want to pay for the pro version, you're going to have to go in and manually sync the calendar. It's kind of one downside of the free account, but I did create the demo and the template to be able to take advantage of the free account. You just have to manually sync the calendar whenever you want to see the new gigs appear. So you just go to the calendar, hit the little down arrow, and hit sync now, and then it will pull in anything new that's on your calendar that isn't there since the last time you synced it. Cool. So now that your calendar is linked, we can go ahead and check out how the actual tracker works. So let's just say we're going to record the revenue and expenses that I had for the test gig. So I'm going to go in and say like what the revenue was test gig. It was yesterday or today, sorry. And then cool. So now that we've synced this calendar, we need to add it to both of these tables. So the way that we do that, this is just a text field type, but we need to actually make it a linked to another record. So when you say link to another record, basically it's pulling in data from some of these other tables. So we're going to select the JS gigs. We're going to hit save. And then now we can see that when we hit the plus button, we're actually pulling in the records from this table. Boom. So then we can select test gig, revenue description. This is optional. Gig revenue. You don't need to type that in every time, but if you just want to say something specific about the revenue, if it's like a unique kind of gig or something, you can add it there. And then revenue category. So this is another linked table that's pulling in from the categories and totals. It has the revenue down here. And you'll notice that this particular link is special in that it limits record selection to a view, which is revenue. So in this table here, this is what's called a view in Airtable. And this is basically it's filtered on the type being revenue. So this field type, there's a couple of them here, is revenue. And then this particular view, which is saved, is only revenue options. So boom, gig revenue. So let's say you made some money from a DJ lesson. DJ lesson for blank. It was last Thursday. Cal event, if you had it on your calendar, you could add it there. DJ lesson for boom. Then there's no category. So if you want to add a new category, then you can come in here and then we'll go back, and then now you'll see that it's available. And how much did you make? Let's say you made $100. Then the way that the rollup fields work, it's going to calculate that for you. Cool. So that's how you log revenue. Up next, I'm going to show you how to log expenses. All right, now I'm going to show you how to log expenses. So logging expenses is essentially the same as logging revenue. And this is doing it from the grid view. So let's say for the test gig, I took lifts to and from the gig. So expense logs, we can say lift for test gig. Which day was it on? It was on 16th. And again, we're going to want to link this to the calendar. We can skip this, and then we can select test gig. Expense category is going to be rideshare. Cost. So let's say it cost $40. It was 20 for each way. 100% for business. It's going to do a calculation to figure out how much you're actually deducting. The percent for business is like, let's say you buy something and it's 50% for personal use and 50% for the business, then you would indicate 50% here. But generally, with these kind of DJ costs, everything's going to be 100%, but you just have to determine that for yourself. And then you can always add a description if you want to. Lift to and from test gig. Miles driven is specifically if you drove your own vehicle. So this is either in relation to a gig, or if you just like drove to a photo shoot, for example, and you drove your own vehicle, then you can actually just log that separately. And I'll just do that right now, just as a test. So drove to photo shoot. Say you did that last Saturday. Cal event if there is one, and then you can just kind of skip over to the miles driven, and let's say you drove 40 miles. And then you'll notice, where did it go? Boom. And then payment method, I always recommend for your DJ business to just use a single credit card. So if you're not doing that already, stop whatever you're doing and just use a single card for your DJ expenses. Don't use any personal items on that card, and put every single thing for your DJ business on this one card. It'll make everything so much easier when you're calculating your taxes, because you only have one place to look versus trying to track expenses across 3 different cards. Because if you do that, you're bound to, miss some of the things that you're calculating. Cool. So that's how you log an expense from the grid. Up next, I'm going to show you how to create new categories. All right, cool. So now I'm going to show you a little bit more about categories. I kind of gave you a preview of this on the revenue section, but just wanted to go a little bit more into detail here. So again, the way that this is working is that these fields are links to another record. So they're linking to this table, which has all of your various categories. And then these are what's called roll-up fields, and these are essentially doing the calculation. So anytime you choose this particular category, it's going to add to the sum here, and it's going to create the sum total of everything that you're putting into here. So I have this grouped. You can do this thing in Airtable called group, and these things over here on the left are called views. So views are a way that you can just view the various information based on certain filters that you have. So I have one here that just has all of the categories, and they're just grouped by the type, which is this field right here, and then sorted just A to Z alphabetically. And then I have one for current expenses. A current expense is essentially a day-to-day business expense, whereas a capital expense is a much larger purchase that's going to last your business multiple years. So the only main capital expenses you're going to have as a DJ are mainly like DJ gear. So whenever you're buying like a new mixer, new controller, anything that's really big, I think like a couple $100 is a good rule of thumb. So if it's over like $200, it's going to last for multiple years, then it's generally a capital expense. If it's something like cables, like XLR cables or something, you can just put that in a current expense, even though it would technically last for multiple years. It's not necessarily a capital expense. And then revenue, this is like any way that you're making money. So if I don't have a category here that you want to add, like for example, I added DJ lessons. Let's say you're a radio DJ and you get radio revenue. You can add that. And same with any of the expense categories here. If you have an expense type that you don't see here that you would like to add, then all you need to do is you can do it from any of the fields. This is probably the easiest. Just go into the particular category that it is. Again, generally it's probably going to be a current expense, and just type this plus button here, and then you can create a new one. So let's go ahead and see how this works in action in terms of the roll-up field. So expense totals, we're going to look to have this change. So let's say I'm logging an expense. Let's say I paid a graphic designer for a new logo design. I paid them on November the 1st. There's no Cal event. So any of these fields, you don't necessarily have to fill out all of them. It's just for organizational purposes if you want to. So you can change this into advertising. Let's say I spent $200. It was 100% for business. Paid. New logo. DJ card. And then this would be a good situation where you'd want to add a receipt. If something's over $75 is the general rule of thumb, then it's always good to have a physical receipt on hand. So while you put the purchase method here to make it find easier, it would be even easier on yourself down the road if you got audited if you just had the receipt in the database here. So you can just add it. Cool. So that's going to get added. And this is sorted based on the date. So that's why these things are changing locations. So we see it here, it's the advertising category 200. Then we're going to go to the categories, and we see that it's added here. So again, if you want to add new expenses, just go to the categories and totals table and add them in the particular section. All right, in this video, I'm going to show you, or this part of the video rather, I'm going to show you how to set up the automations. The automations is, in my opinion, the coolest part of this whole tracker system. It's basically the thing that will remind you to spill out your expenses right after the gig, so that way you actually have a higher chance of doing it than if you try to, do all of this in March or April when taxes are due. So the first automation we're going to set up is a post-gig reminder. So you're going to go to the Automations tab up at the top, and we're going to create your first automation. So we're going to add a trigger, and we're going to say when record matches conditions. We're going to say, basically when you do this, or when you click one of these buttons, a little panel on the right is where you edit everything. So we're going to do JS gigs. We're going to add a condition. We're going to say when start, which means like when the start time of the event is yesterday. So basically saying when the start time of the event is yesterday. So if your gig was yesterday, that's the trigger for the automation. Then we're going to come in here, we're going to do add action, and we're going to send email. So I'm just going to put in my email for a test, but you would put in your email, obviously. And then subject, we're going to say record revenue and expenses for, and then you can use this plus button. It's actually pretty cool. It will pull in the name of the event. So you can hit the plus and then hit title, and it's going to pull in the name of the event. So we're just going to say something like record the finances for title. And again, you can customize this. What I like to do is something like this. So it's going to say revenue, and these two dots are basically just the markdown. So this is bold. And then we're going to do two things. We're going to do form and grid. Now, what are these? So I'm going to go back. You can just say do this later. We go to the revenue log. You're going to have this form here, and this is the thing where you can just basically click on this link, and it will allow you to enter this information, and it will create a new record in Airtable. So you can go to share form. You can copy this link. If you want to see what it looks like, you can pop it in your browser. This is what it's going to look like when you get it in the email. So we're just going to copy this. We're going to go back to the automation. And the way that you do hyperlinks is you put this in brackets, and then you put the link in parentheses. Boom. Boom. And then by the grid, I just mean like literally the link to the table right here. I just do both, just whatever's easier for you to fill in. You don't have to do both, but just to give you an example of what it's going to look like. So that's revenue, and then we're essentially going to do the same thing for expenses. Form. So we're going to go to data, go to expense log, click on the form here, share a form, copy the whole link, back to automations, boom, and then last one, grid, make sure to click on this table here, and then you highlight this, the URL at the top, and drop it in here. Boom. So again, when record matches conditions, make sure you pull in your calendar table. When the start time is yesterday, send an email to yourself. Subject, something like this. Again, you can customize it however you want to do it. You don't need to copy me. And then we're going to test it just so you can see what it looks like. So select a record. This was my gig from yesterday. I'm going to run an automation. I'm going to pop into my email. And boom, this is what it looks like. So you can click on the form and then just fill in your revenue. And I guess we'll just test it. Test. We'll skip all this. Revenue category, gig revenue, revenue amount, $100. And then if we go into the table, we can switch it to on now. Go to the revenue log. Boom, this is it right here. I didn't add a date, so it's going to show up right here. And then you can see the revenue right there, and then it automatically adds it to my revenue here. So that's how the first automation works, which is and if you want to rename it, you can go post gig reminder. Cool. So also, I want to create an automation to just basically send a weekly reminder to update your expenses. So we're going to do add trigger. At this one, we're just going to do add a scheduled time. Interval type, weeks, every 1 week. I like to do Sunday, but again, this is completely customizable to you. So if you want to do it on like Monday morning, if that's your workflow, whatever works best for you. I like to do the morning, Sunday morning, starting whatever date, upcoming, starting on the 18th. And then you're basically just going to send an email and basically send the same thing. So and then we can actually just copy all of this. Record your weekly. So that way if you forgot to do it or you ignored the email, you're going to get another email at least once a week to do the same thing. So boom. Once you do that, you can turn it on. Again, if you want to test it, you can test it. And then you can go back here. And it's going to do the same thing. Boom. So that is the automation section of the video. Again, this is one of the coolest parts, and it really has helped me. I've been testing this so far with myself, and it's helped me remember to do this on a routine basis. Okay, cool. So now that we have the tracker set up, I'm going to show you how to view the interface so you can see a summary of your business at a high level. So if you go ahead and click on interfaces in the top, this should already be built out for you. You can go ahead and click on summary, and then you're going to see a cool visual display of all the data. The way that this works is it's pulling in the data from the actual base and just presenting it in a visual way. So on the top here we have revenue just broken out in a few different ways. You can see the breakdown of like where your actual revenue is coming from, whether it's from gig revenue, DJ lessons, maybe you get podcast advertising. If you throw events, how much money you're making from your events, you can throw it in here, like your radio, whatever it is. And then you can see the breakdown over here as well. And then the table below just shows the breakdown of your expenses. So that way you can see, like where are you actually spending the most money, and you can see if it's effective for you. And then the last part down here is just the total number of miles that you've driven. So if you want to edit these and play around and add new ones, you can. You can just use this thing called down here add element, and you can add various things. The way that this works is essentially, if you click on this, for example, it's pulling in from a particular table. So this is pulling in from the expense log, and then it is a field summary of which field it is, miles driven field, and then it's saying a sum. And then like the expenses one, for example, this is pulling in from the categories and totals. And then this is the current expenses, so it's filtered on current expense. The field is category, so it's showing a breakdown of all the various categories that exist. And then again, it's a sum here. So this is cool. Again, the way that, and then you publish it if you want to save the changes. and let's just make a change. So let's say I made some podcast revenue. So I would come in here, go to the revenue log, let's say December podcast advertising. So I got paid today, no cal event, so ad revenue. Select it here, podcast revenue. Let's say I made $100. So if you go back to the interface, you'll now see that this is also here. So these are called interfaces, and it's just a really cool way to visualize all of your data. Hey, what up everyone, this is Jamie Selects. Thank you again for watching the tutorial video. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up in the comments or shoot me an email, jamie@jamieselects.com. Happy to try to get that answered for you. And if you like the video, if you like the tutorials, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, the like button, share it out with your homies. We really appreciate showing this to many DJs who would find it useful. Until next time, thank you.